The Nintendo Switch has always been a go-to console for couch co-op gaming, and 2024 was no different. So let's talk about the top 10 couch co-op games that came out on the Nintendo Switch in 2024. Let's start with Surmount. So this is a game that's all about climbing. You and a partner are going to climb this mountain called Mount Ohm, and apparently nobody has been able to climb it before. The mechanics here are kind of weird, and they take a bit of getting used to, but basically you climb with one hand at a time. So then you spin your body around and throw it up, and then one of the hands will grab on, and you keep doing this to get higher up the mountain. The main downside here is it's just not very intuitive, but again, once you get the hang of it, it gets a lot better. Each hand is dedicated to a different button, ZR and ZL, so you're going to want to be holding those buttons in to be able to grab onto things. While you're climbing, you're going to need to keep an eye on your stamina. Once it's depleted, you will fall down. This is a game that definitely got some mixed reviews, but I personally really liked it. It's just a fun, lighthearted game, and you could play it with the whole family, if they can wrap their head around the controls. Now let's talk about World of Goo 2. I never played the original World of Goo. I heard of it, but I wasn't really familiar with the gameplay. It's basically a physics-based puzzle game, and you can play it with up to 4 players in local co-op. This one came out on home computers, but it's exclusive to the Switch as far as home consoles go. And the co-op mode is exclusive to the Switch, so that's why I really wanted to talk about it. But basically, each player takes control of a cursor, and you're able to move around to manipulate the goo in order to work together to solve the puzzles. It's kind of an interesting game, because the goo moves around realistically like any fluid would. And when you're playing with friends, the first player is the only one that can take control of the camera. And this is probably a good thing, so you're not fighting over that. I do think the gameplay is very unique. However, I do think that it gets kind of repetitive after a while. That being said, I think this one's good for casual players. Anyone can pick this one up and play it. Another Nintendo Switch exclusive is Mario vs. Donkey Kong. So this is a remake of the Game Boy game, and the main benefit here is that they added 2-player co-op. So when you're going around solving your puzzles, you can team up with a second player, and they can take control of Toad. I think this game turned out to be much better than I was ever expecting it to be. I liked the original game, I was familiar with it, but I just wasn't sure how co-op would work. But basically they made it so Toad can do just about everything that Mario can. The objective is to pick up various keys and go through the environment to unlock the doors and move on to the next level. It's pretty straightforward. Unlike most Mario games where you just jump on your opponents to kill them, in this one you can just pick them up and throw them off the edge into lava or spikes, or you can throw items on them. You're also going to use them to help you platform to higher spaces. The gameplay changes up a lot here. I think there's enough variety here to keep things interesting. And at the end of every world, you're going to be faced with a boss fight against Donkey Kong. And each one of these is unique too. Overall, I think that this is a really excellent co-op game. And when it comes to couch co-op games that were exclusive to the Switch, there weren't a whole lot in 2024. So this is definitely one of the best. How about we talk about Cult of the Lamb? So this game did not come out originally in 2024, but they did add local co-op this year. So that's why I want to talk about it. So basically, this is a hack and slash roguelite. The levels are procedurally generated, as are the weapons. But then those areas are broken up by base building gameplay, and each part kind of contributes to the other. When you're in the dungeons fighting, you're able to grab more resources and recruit new cult members. And then when you're back at the camp and you're doing your base building, you're able to upgrade your stats by participating in cult activities, I guess. In the dungeon crawling parts, you're going to go through various stages where you're going to fight a number of mini bosses. Once you fight 3 mini bosses, then you will fight the main boss, and there are 4 total. And then when you go back to your base, there's some crafting, there's cooking, you're basically taking care of your cult. Anyway, it's all very interesting and unique. I love this game, and I think it works really well as a co-op game. So I'm really glad that they added that to the game. Contra Operation Galuga. Is this the Contra game that we've been waiting for? In my opinion, I think it is. This is kind of like a reimagining of the original Contra arcade game, and the one that came out on NES. I don't love the 2.5D visuals, but once you get past that, the gameplay is all intact. It feels like a Contra game, but this time you can play it with up to 4 players co-op. I was lucky enough to play through this game when it first came out with my friends, and it was a blast. It has the same Contra difficulty, but one bonus is that you can actually change the difficulty level if you suck, and play through the game with more lives. So yeah, that's what we had to do. But it makes it so anyone can try it. But then of course, if you really want to challenge yourself, you can go back and limit the lives and get your ass beat. I think that WayForward did a really excellent job of this. And that's honestly not a surprise, because they were behind Contra 4, which is also considered to be one of the best Contra games. If you were hesitant to try this one out, get a few of your friends together and definitely play it. It's totally worth it. Cat Quest 3. Now, this is the second game in the series to have local co-op. So if you're familiar, it's basically like a dungeon crawler action RPG that you can play in 2-player co-op. And this one might be the best in the series. This is a really equal co-op experience, and the second player can join in from the very beginning of the game. They're also able to talk to NPCs, control the map, and do all the same upgrades that player 1 can do. And yeah, this is a game you really don't need to play the first 2. It's kind of just a standalone game. You're not going to miss any story. And even if you did, who cares? You're not playing this for the story, okay? It's just a cute, fun action RPG that you can play with a friend. And yeah, this is another one that you could definitely pick up and play with your family. There were a number of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games that came out in 2024. The one I want to talk about today is TMNT Splintered Fate. This one originally came out on iOS, but it was ported to the Nintendo Switch as well as Steam this year. And these versions of the game is where they added local co-op gameplay for the first time. Unlike a lot of the TMNT games that are typically beat 'em ups, this one is a dungeon crawler roguelite type of game. And you can play it with up to 4 players. Even though the visuals here and some of the gameplay, it kind of makes it look like a budget title, it was meant to be played on a phone originally, so that assumption isn't completely wrong. But that doesn't mean it's not worth trying out. There's a lot of substance here. Each character has their own unique abilities, and you're able to power them up. So like most roguelite games, each room is procedurally generated, and so are the items that you pick up. After you clear a room, you're able to choose your upgrade, and all stats and upgrades only last during that run. So if you die, you lose everything. So this is a game that's definitely going to take some patience. At the end of each major area, you're going to end it with a boss fight. So you're going to see a lot of familiar faces: Bebop and Rocksteady, Leatherhead, and of course Shredder. But this is a game that's going to require you to play through it multiple times. And it's really difficult, but it's definitely better when you can play it with friends. Rugrats Adventures in Gameland. I was obsessed with Rugrats as a kid. It was one of my favorite childhood cartoons. And when it came to Rugrats video games, none of them were really that good. So when this game was announced, I was really excited. Not only was it released on modern platforms, it also came out on the NES. So that was really cool to see as well. It kind of plays like a mix between DuckTales and Mario 2, I would say. Maybe with some Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers as well. When you play it on modern platforms, you're able to switch it to the 8-bit look as well. And you can change it on the fly, so that was pretty cool. And I definitely prefer that look. You can play as 4 characters, all of the babies. You got Phil, Lil, Chucky, and Tommy. And each of them have their own unique abilities. And you're able to switch between them on the fly in order to get past certain obstacles. This is really a top-tier NES homebrew. And if I didn't know any better, I would think that this was a late release NES game. Everything about it is great. I highly recommend you play this game. Abothor is a 2D action platformer. This one has been ported to pretty much every modern platform. It definitely has some Golden Axe vibes, but it's a platformer, not a beat 'em up. And you can play it with up to 4 players co-op. And I think that's where the game really shines. It might feel a little bit generic and uninspired if you're playing it single player, but add in a few friends, it definitely elevates the experience. There are 4 playable characters, and they each have their own unique abilities. The first player is like a barbarian. He has just a normal hack and slash melee attack, as well as a dodge roll. Then you have the female character. She has a sword and a shield. Then you have this character that's almost like a ninja, and he has quick attacks, and he can do a jumping slash. And then you have this character who is the magic user. There's a lot of variety in levels here. Sometimes you're going to be climbing, sometimes you're going to be jumping, and in one level you'll be fighting on top of a flying bird. This is definitely an underrated game that came out this year, so I highly recommend you play it. And one of my favorite co-op games to come out this year was Shadow of the Ninja Reborn. This is a remake of Shadow of the Ninja that originally came out on the NES. If you're familiar with the original one, think of the old school Ninja Gaiden games on NES, and then add in 2-player co-op. It's kind of like that, but I found that the controls aren't quite as stiff as Ninja Gaiden, and it's a little bit more forgiving. But this is a full remake. Now the game has really beautiful updated pixel art. This looks like it could have come out on the PlayStation 1 or the Sega Saturn. Just a lot of detail in the visuals. That being said, this remake is incredibly difficult. It's way harder than the NES game. Fortunately though, you do get unlimited continues, but you only have one life, so if you die, you have to start the whole level over. Natsume has remade a number of their classic games. They did Ninja Warriors, Wild Guns, and Pocky and Rocky. All of those are really fun games, and this is another great addition to that collection. So there you go. Those are my top 10 couch co-op games on the Nintendo Switch that came out in 2024. What are some of your favorites? And if you enjoyed this video, check out our video from last week where we talked about fully 3D couch co-op games that came out in 2024. And thanks for watching.